Welcome back. You should have VirtualBox downloaded and installed. Let's go on to assignment 2 now. In assignment 2, we are getting Fedora Linux, and we're going to download it from the Fedora website and install it in VirtualBox. It's very similar to the installation we did with Windows 7 in class, but we're going to be using a different ISO file. So let's open up a new tab and let's type exactly what we're looking for in the Google search engine. We're searching for Fedora, and because this is older operating systems, we don't want to get the most recent version of Fedora. We want to get an older one. Fedora 13. I think the newest one is Fedora 31 or 32. And I can see here the 64-bit version is available. Okay, so Linux is an operating system like Windows. It looks and feels a little bit different, and there are these different distributions like Red Hat and Fedora that will make more sense later. We're getting version 13, and version 13 comes in a 32-bit and a 64-bit. That will make a little bit more sense a little bit later on when we learn about CPUs, the difference between 32-bit operating system and a 64-bit operating system. So for now, either type it in 64-bit or just click on the link or autocomplete that appears in the search bar. Fedora 13 download 64-bit. Now, before I click to install, I want to read the address very carefully. I want to make sure I'm getting the correct version of Fedora. So I can see here 13, and I see the number 64. By the way, if you look carefully here, I just clicked on the link. We'll wait for the web page to load up. If I look carefully, I also see the x86. That means it's both. It's both a 64-bit version, and the x86 means 32-bit. So we really don't need to worry about it. That will do the trick for both of us. And it's an ISO file. Just like when we installed Windows 7, we needed an ISO file. This also is an ISO file. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look down. I see a number of files. I really want the largest one. So let me zoom in a little bit. You can see the largest one is 3.4 gigabytes, and that is the complete installation ISO. Alternatively, to make the download a little bit easier, they have broken it up into multiple files, and you can see each of them is smaller. So this would be part 1, part 2, but we don't want that. Go ahead and click on the largest one, the 3.4 gig, that one that I have highlighted, download it, and then come back and watch the rest of the video. You can pause right now. Let me click to show you what happens. Just like with VirtualBox, the download begins. And you can save that to your desktop. So just go to your desktop, create a folder, new folder. I've done it already, OS, short for operating systems, and download it there. So go ahead, pause this video. It takes probably about an hour to download that video. Now, I'm assuming you have Fedora 13, the 64-bit version, downloaded already. We're now ready to install it in VirtualBox. And it's actually very similar to what we did with Windows 7. Now, if you recall, the way we did this is we clicked on New, and then we typed Fedora, and we can just put in here a meaningful name. Okay, so we're doing this for older operating systems, okay, or You could just type Module 3. The name really doesn't matter as long as you know what it is and you realize that it's going to create a file on your host machine with that same name. So if you have any doubt, if you think you're going to have multiple files, multiple virtual machines with the same name, just put some random numbers and letters right after it, okay? And that way you won't have a conflict with file names. So let me go ahead and click Next. Okay, now if you recall, this part is really important. If you do not give enough RAM or memory to the virtual machine, you're going to be sitting there forever waiting for it to install. So let's pull the slider up, give it as much memory as possible, but don't go into the red zone. When you go into the red zone, then there will not be enough memory for the host computer. So it's a trade-off. The more memory you give to your virtual machine, the less you will have for your host. So let's stop about there, close to the border between the two, and click Next. Now I'm going to accept most of the defaults here, so I'm going to go pretty quickly. I can see here hard disk type, create a virtual hard disk now. Sure, just accept the default. You don't have to change anything. Don't change anything. Accept the default. Don't change anything again. Accept the default. Here I'm going to change things a little bit. Okay, I don't think 8 gigabytes is enough. I'm going to bump that up to 11. Now for Fedora 13 that will be fine, but if you are installing a more modern operating system like Windows 10 or Fedora 31, the most recent version, you're going to need a lot more than that. But for Fedora 13, we're fine. The only other thing you need to really pay attention to is, now remember, a virtual machine is just a file on your hard drive. That's the name of it. Okay, so just make sure you don't have a conflict in the file name. If you click Create and you get an error message, it tells you the file name already exists. Like I said, just put in some random letters and numbers after it and you'll be fine. You'll probably encounter that at least once or twice within the next couple of weeks. Now, look at the path. Look where it's being installed to. After it's installed, we're going to go look at that location. Okay, so I see users, student, that's the word student in French, VirtualBox, machines, Fedora, and then finally I have this VDI file. That's what a virtual machine is. It's just a file. Let's click Create. Now, if you recall back to Windows 7, what did we do? We weren't finished. We now had to point to the ISO file. Now, where did you download your ISO file to? I downloaded it right here to my desktop. There's my Fedora 13 64-bit. Okay, so I'm good to go. I have it on my desktop. Let's right-click on the sidebar. You can see the Fedora Module 3. Go ahead and right-click. Go to Settings. Couple of things we have to do here, not much. First thing is go to Storage, highlight that empty CD or DVD, and point it to that ISO file. Where's that ISO file? Well, in my case, it was on my desktop. Okay, so make sure you're able to locate it. There it is. That's the first thing you have to do here. The other thing we need to do here is we need to click on the system link. There's a boot order. When I double click on this Fedora 13, this link here, VirtualBox wants to start a virtual machine. It's actually looking for something to boot up or something to start. And it's going to look in different locations to try to find something that can be started or booted from. Well, we don't use floppies anymore, so let's go ahead and uncheck that, and let's push it down. Okay. Optical disk, well, it's going to look at the optical disk first, your ISO file. If it doesn't find anything, it'll move on to the hard drive. I recommend changing that order. put the hard drive first and the optical drive second. So when you start it up for the first time, this machine, it's not going to find anything on the hard drive. Nothing is installed. Then it's going to go on to the next device in the boot order or boot sequence. It will find the installation. It will install, shut down, and then when it starts again, it will boot up from the hard drive. Now that's not a problem on recent operating systems, but on older operating systems, you need to do that, and I'll tell you why. Imagine your optical drive is first. So you start your virtual machine, it sees the ISO file, it installs it, then you shut down, and then you start again, and then it comes right back to your ISO file again and installs again. Okay, so that's why we want to put the hard drive first. It won't have anything to boot from the first time. We'll move on to the optical drive, install it, you shut down, restart, and then it has something to boot from the hard drive. So if that's a little confusing, don't worry too much about it. Just make sure the hard drive is your first boot device. Let's click OK. I think we're ready to start it up. So I'm going to click the Start button, and I'm going to begin the installation. Okay, now I see here it's having trouble finding that CD, so I'm just going to maybe tweak with it a little bit. Let's click the Browse button, and let's go ahead and grab that Fedora 13. Okay, optical media. Click Choose, and let's start. And let's see if it starts this time. Hopefully it started in your case. If it didn't, you might have to do something like what I'm doing. So there we go. We have a menu. Let's look at the menu. It's very similar to the menu we had when we were installing Windows 7 in your first module. So you can see here, install a new operating system, install a system with basic video drivers, rescue an installed system, that's for troubleshooting, and likewise the other links are for troubleshooting. So I'm going to choose the first one. And this is going to be a graphical install. I have Windows 10. I have a 64-bit computer in front of me. Everything should work fine. If you encounter a problem here, you may need to do it with basic drivers. So I'm going to go ahead and click Install. Away it goes. It's beginning the installation. And now, this part is important. We have two options here. Check the DVD or optical media, or skip that check phase. There is no CD here. There is no optical media. It's only an ISO file. So if you click OK, you're going to get an error message. Click Skip. And notice here I'm using the arrow keys on my keyboard. I am not using my mouse. I go ahead and skip, and I am going to stop right here, okay, and continue with the next phase of the installation. You can see here I have this window here to help me through the installation. I'm going to continue with this installation in the next video. So just look for Assignment 2B Review, and we'll continue the installation from here.